The blood on her traveling dress had long since dried to a rust-colored stain by the time Lillian Graves stepped off the stagecoach in Ouray, Colorado, in the summer of 1878. But the whispers followed her like a shadow she could never outrun. She clutched her single carpetbag tighter as she surveyed the mining town, nestled in a box canyon, surrounded by the San Juan Mountains that rose like guardians around the valley. The air was thinner here, harder to breathe, but perhaps that was just the weight of starting over for the third time in as many years. Behind her, she heard two women from the stage whisper to each other, their voices carrying despite their attempts at discretion. "That is her, I am certain of it. Martha wrote me from Denver, said she killed her husband in cold blood. I heard it was 3 men, all dead by her hand." Lillian's jaw tightened, but she did not turn around. Let them whisper, let them spread their poison. She had learned that the truth mattered little when people had already decided what story they wanted to believe. The real story was far more complicated, but complexity did not survive the journey from town to town. Only the scandal remained, growing larger with each retelling. She walked toward the main street, her worn boots kicking up dust. Ouray was booming with silver mining, the streets crowded with prospectors, merchants, and the inevitable collection of gamblers and opportunists that followed wealth like flies to honey. She needed work, and she needed it quickly. The few coins in her purse would not last more than a week, even in a boarding house. The Mercantile seemed as good a place as any to inquire about respectable employment. The sign above read, "Patterson General Store," and through the window she could see shelves stocked with supplies. She pushed open the door, and a bell chimed overhead. A middle-aged woman behind the counter looked up, her expression polite but measuring. Lillian had grown accustomed to that look, the way people sized her up, trying to determine if she was respectable or dangerous or somewhere in between. "Help you, miss? I am looking for work," Lillian said directly. She had learned not to waste time with pleasantries. "I can keep accounts, I can read and write, and I am not afraid of hard labor." The woman's eyes traveled over Lillian's dress, pausing at the stain. "What sort of work were you doing before?" "I kept house for a family in Denver," Lillian lied smoothly. "But the position ended when they moved back east." "We do not have any positions here," the woman said, her tone final. "You might try the hotel, they are always needing chambermaids." It was a dismissal, and Lillian recognized it. She nodded and turned to leave, but as she did, the door opened again and a man walked in. He was tall, with shoulders that spoke of hard work and a face weathered by sun and wind. His hat was pushed back, revealing dark hair and eyes that were a startling blue against his tanned skin. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where he belonged in the world. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," he said, his voice a low drawl. "I need to pick up that order I placed last week." "Of course, Mr. Lawson. Let me get that for you." Lillian tried to slip past him, but the store was small and he stepped aside to let her pass. Their eyes met for just a moment, and she saw something in his gaze that was not the usual suspicion or judgment. Just simple curiosity and perhaps a hint of interest. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat. She nodded and hurried out before he could say anything else. The last thing she needed was attention from a man, no matter how courteous he seemed. Men were the source of all her troubles, from her father who had sold her into marriage at 16, to the husband who had made her life hell, to the marshal who had believed his lies even as she stood bleeding from his fists. The hotel was called the Beaumont, a 2-story building that looked like it had been constructed hastily to accommodate the mining boom. Inside, the lobby was plain but clean. A clerk at the desk looked up as she approached. "I am inquiring about employment," she said. "We are not hiring at present," he replied without much interest. "Are you certain? I am a hard worker and I can provide references." Another lie, but what choice did she have? "We are not hiring," he repeated, more firmly this time. Lillian felt frustration building behind her ribs. This was how it always went. Either people had heard the whispers and would not risk employing her, or they sensed something about her that made them uneasy. Perhaps it was the wariness in her eyes, the way she held herself ready to run at a moment's notice. She left the hotel and walked down the main street, asking at every establishment. The saloon owner looked her up and down and offered her work that made her stomach turn. She declined with as much dignity as she could muster and walked out. By late afternoon, she was exhausted and desperate. She found herself at the edge of town, near a livery stable where horses stamped and nickered in their stalls. A sign on the fence caught her eye. "Lawson Ranch. Hiring seasonal hands. Inquire within." She hesitated. Ranch work would be hard, and she had no experience with cattle or horses beyond the most basic riding. But she was out of options. She pushed open the gate and walked into the stable yard. The same man from the mercantile was there, loading supplies into a wagon. He looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Help you, madam. The sign says you are hiring," Lillian said. "I need work." He straightened, studying her with those blue eyes. "Ranch work is not easy. You ever worked with cattle?" "No," she admitted. "But I learn quickly and I am not afraid of hard work." "Where are you from?" "Denver," she said, keeping her answer short. "Why come to Ouray?" "I needed a change of scenery." He was silent for a moment and she could see him weighing something in his mind. "What is your name?" "Lillian Graves." If he recognized the name, he gave no sign of it. "Samuel Lawson. Most folks call me Sam. I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles out of town. It is just me and 3 hands right now. We are short because one of my men broke his leg last month and had to go back to his family in Kansas." "What would the work entail?" "Cooking, mostly," he said. "My men are tired of their own cooking and I am worse than they are. If you can cook for 4 men 3 times a day and do not mind being on a ranch with no other women around, the job is yours. Pay is $30 a month plus room and board." $30. It was more than she had expected, and the fact that he was willing to hire her without references felt like a miracle. "I can cook," she said. "When would you like me to start?" "Tomorrow morning. Be here at dawn and I will take you out to the ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "Sam," he corrected. "We do not stand on formality out at the ranch." She nodded and turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Miss Graves." She looked back. "I do not know what brought you to Ouray, and I am not going to pry. But I want you to know that what matters to me is whether a person does honest work and treats others fairly. The past is the past." Something in her chest loosened just slightly. "Thank you," she said again, and this time she meant it more deeply than before. That night, she stayed in the cheapest boarding house she could find, a cramped room that smelled of mildew and old tobacco. She lay awake on the lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling and wondering if this time might be different. Samuel Lawson had kind eyes. That did not mean anything, of course. Her husband had seemed kind at first too, but there had been something genuine in the way Sam spoke, a straightforwardness that felt rare. She rose before dawn and made her way to the livery stable. Sam was already there, hitching horses to a wagon. In the early morning light, she could see him more clearly. He was probably in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most, with strong hands and a way of moving that suggested confidence without arrogance. "Morning," he said. "You travel light." She glanced at her single carpet bag. "I find it easier that way." He did not press, just helped her up onto the wagon seat and climbed up beside her. They rode out of town as the sun began to paint the mountain peaks gold and pink. The landscape was breathtaking, wild and rugged in a way that made her feel small and insignificant. Maybe that was not such a bad thing. "How long have you had the ranch?" she asked, more to fill the silence than from genuine curiosity. 5 years, he said. "Bought it with money I saved working cattle drives. It is not the biggest spread, but it is mine. About 300 head of cattle, some good grazing land, a creek that runs through the property." "Do you have family?" "Not anymore. My parents died of cholera when I was 18. Had a brother, but he went off to California and I have not heard from him in years." He glanced at her. "What about you?" "No one," she said simply. They rode in silence for a while longer until the ranch came into view. It was nestled in a valley with mountains rising on 3 sides. The ranch house was modest but well built, with a wide porch and a stone chimney. There was a barn, a bunkhouse, and several corrals. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. "It is beautiful," Lillian said, and she meant it. Sam looked pleased. "I think so too. Come on, I will show you the house." Inside, the house was sparsely furnished but clean. The main room had a stone fireplace, a table with chairs, and a few shelves lined with books. The kitchen was off to one side, with a cast iron stove and a good supply of pots and pans. "Your room is upstairs," Sam said, leading her up a narrow staircase. "It is small, but it has a good window and a lock on the door." He said this last part deliberately, meeting her eyes. "I want you to feel safe here." She felt that loosening in her chest again. "Thank you. The men eat breakfast at 6, lunch at noon, and supper at 7. They are not picky, but they eat a lot. I will introduce you, and then I will let you settle in." The 3 ranch hands were named Tom, Miguel, and Billy. Tom was a grizzled man in his 50s with a weathered face and kind eyes. Miguel was younger, maybe 25, with an easy smile. Billy could not have been more than 19, tall and gangly and shy. They all greeted her with varying degrees of surprise and politeness. "We are glad to have you, Miss Graves," Tom said. "No offense to Sam, but his cooking could kill a man." Sam laughed. "None taken. It is true." Lillian managed a small smile. "I will do my best." Over the next few days, she fell into a routine. She woke before dawn to start breakfast, cooked 3 substantial meals a day, and cleaned up afterward. It was hard work, but it was honest work, and for the first time in years she felt a sense of purpose. The men treated her with respect, and Sam kept his distance, friendly but not overly familiar. But she could not escape the whispers entirely. On her second Sunday at the ranch, Sam took her into town to buy supplies. As they walked through the mercantile, she saw women turn away from her, their faces set in disapproval. She heard fragments of conversation. "That woman at the Lawson ranch, I heard she murdered her husband." 3 men, Martha said, shot them dead. Sam Lawson should be more careful who he hires. Lillian felt her face grow hot, but she kept her head high and continued selecting flour and sugar. Sam, walking beside her, frowned. "What are they talking about?" he asked quietly. "Nothing that concerns you," she said, but Sam was not easily put off. That evening, as she cleaned up after supper, he came into the kitchen and leaned against the doorframe. "I heard some talk in town today," he said. "About you." Her hands stilled in the dishwater. "I see. They are saying you killed your husband." She turned to face him, her chin lifted. "And do you believe them?" He studied her for a long moment. "I believe that there is always more to a story than gossip reveals. If you want to tell me what really happened, I will listen. If you do not, that is your right." She dried her hands slowly on a towel, considering. She had not told anyone the full truth since that night 2 years ago. But something about Sam made her want to trust him, even though trust had brought her nothing but pain. My husband was a violent man, she said finally. He drank, and when he drank, he used his fists. I bore it for 3 years because I had nowhere else to go, and because he told me he would kill me if I tried to leave. One night, he came home drunk and angrier than usual. He had lost money at cards, and he blamed me for it, as he blamed me for everything. He beat me so badly that I thought I would die, so I fought back. I grabbed the fireplace poker and I hit him. Just once, but it was enough. He fell and hit his head on the hearth. She paused, the memory vivid and terrible. He died 3 days later without waking up. The marshal ruled it self-defense, but people talked. They said I must have provoked him, that I was a bad wife, that I probably wanted him dead so I could take his money. Never mind that there was no money, or that my face was black and blue, or that the doctor said my ribs were broken. All they saw was a woman who had killed her husband. Sam's expression was somber. And the story about 3 men, lies all of it, but lies travel faster than truth. He was quiet for a moment, then pushed off from the door frame and walked closer. I am sorry that happened to you, and I am sorry people judge you for defending your own life. You believe me, I do, and even if I did not know the details, I know you. I have watched you these past 2 weeks. You are kind to the horses, patient with Billy when he tracks mud through the house, and you work harder than anyone I have ever seen. That tells me more about your character than any amount of gossip. Something inside her cracked open, a wall she had built around her heart to keep from being hurt again. Why are you being so kind to me? He smiled, a slow, warm smile that made her stomach flip. Because you deserve kindness, Lillian. And because I think you have not had nearly enough of it in your life. From that night on, things shifted between them. It was subtle at first. Sam found reasons to linger in the kitchen after meals, talking to her about the ranch, about his plans for the future, about books they had both read. She learned that he was well educated, that his mother had been a school teacher, and had insisted on teaching her sons to read and appreciate literature. He learned that she had wanted to be a teacher herself before her father had forced her into marriage. You still could, Sam said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the mountains. Teach, I mean. Once you have saved enough money, you could open a school. It is a nice dream, she said wistfully. But I do not think the parents in Ouray would want their children taught by a woman like me. Then they would be fools. His voice was fierce. You are one of the smartest people I have ever met, Lillian. Do not let small-minded gossips convince you otherwise. She looked at him, at the way the fading light caught in his blue eyes, and felt her heart do something dangerous. She was falling for him. It was reckless and foolish and exactly what she should not be doing, but she could not seem to stop herself. The whispers in town continued. Every time she went into Ouray with Sam, she felt eyes on her, heard the murmured conversations. But Sam never wavered in his support. He made it clear to everyone that Lillian Graves worked for him, and that anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with him directly. Most people were not brave enough to challenge Sam Lawson. He had a reputation as a fair man, but not one to be crossed. One afternoon in late August, Sam came back to the ranch earlier than usual. Lillian was in the kitchen, rolling out dough for biscuits, when he walked in looking troubled. What is wrong? She asked immediately. I ran into a man in town, said he knew you from Denver, name of Charles Winters. Lillian's blood ran cold. What did he want? He was asking questions about you. Wanted to know if you were working here, how long you had been in Ouray. Sam's eyes were sharp. Who is he, Lillian? He is my late husband's business partner, she said, her voice shaking. He blamed me for my husband's death. He said I owed him money, that my husband had debts I was responsible for. I left Denver because he would not leave me alone. Is there any truth to the debt? No. My husband died with nothing but debts, and they all died with him. Charles is just bitter because he lost money in some bad investments and he wants someone to blame." Sam's jaw tightened. "He will not bother you. I will make sure of it." "You do not understand. Charles is not a good man. He is dangerous. So am I when I need to be." 2 days later, Charles Winters rode out to the ranch. Lillian saw him coming from the kitchen window and felt panic rise in her throat. She ran to find Sam, who was in the barn checking on a mare about to foal. "He is here," she said breathlessly. "Charles is here." Sam straightened immediately. "Stay in the house. Lock the door, Sam. Please be careful." He touched her face gently, just a brief brush of his fingers against her cheek. "I will be fine. Trust me." She watched from the window as Sam walked out to meet Charles in the yard. Charles was a heavy-set man with a cruel face and cold eyes. He dismounted and stood with his hands on his hips, his stance aggressive. "You Samuel Lawson?" Charles demanded. "I am. What is your business here?" "I am here for Lillian Graves. She owes me money and I mean to collect." "Miss Graves does not owe you anything. I suggest you turn around and ride back to wherever you came from." Charles sneered. "She has you fooled, does she? That woman is a murderer, killed her husband and probably would have killed me too if I had not been careful." "I know what happened to her husband," Sam said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And I know that she acted in self-defense. Now you are going to leave my property and you are not going to come back. If you bother Miss Graves again, you will answer to me. And what are you going to do about it?" Charles took a threatening step forward. In a movement so fast Lillian almost missed it, Sam had his revolver drawn and pointed at Charles. "I am going to defend what is mine. Lillian is under my protection. That means if you threaten her, you threaten me. Now, I am a reasonable man, but I have my limits. Get back on your horse and leave." Charles looked at the gun, then at Sam's face, and apparently decided he did not want to test how serious Sam was. "You have not heard the last of this," he said, but he was already backing toward his horse. "I think I have," Sam replied. They all watched as Charles rode away. Tom, Miguel, and Billy had emerged from various parts of the ranch, all armed. It occurred to Lillian that Sam had probably signaled them somehow, that he had not been alone in that confrontation even though it had seemed like it. She met him at the door, her hands shaking. "Thank you. Are you all right?" "I am now." She looked up at him, at this man who had defended her without hesitation, who believed in her when no one else did. "Sam, I do not know how to repay you." "You do not owe me anything, Lillian. I did what any decent person would do." "No," she said. "You did more than that. You have been kinder to me than anyone in my entire life." They stood there on the porch, the afternoon sun warm around them, and something passed between them that felt like a promise. That night, after supper was cleaned up and the men had gone to the bunkhouse, Sam asked her to take a walk with him. They strolled along the creek that ran through the property, the water chattering over stones, the air cooling as the sun dipped behind the mountains. "I have something to tell you," Sam said, "and I hope it will not make things awkward between us, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." Lillian's heart began to race. "What is it?" "I have feelings for you," he said simply. "I have for a while now. I know you have been through hell, and I know you might not be ready to think about a future with anyone. But I wanted you to know that when I look ahead, when I think about the years to come, I see you there with me." She stopped walking, turning to face him. The evening light was soft on his face, and she had never seen anyone look at her the way he was looking at her now, like she was something precious and worth protecting. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I am afraid to trust this, to trust you. Not because you have given me any reason to doubt you, but because everything I have ever trusted has hurt me." "I know," he said. "And I am not asking you to make any decisions right now. I just wanted you to know that I do not see your past when I look at you. I see a woman who survived something terrible and came out stronger. I see someone brave and kind and beautiful. I see my future if you will have me." Tears pricked at her eyes. "They will never stop whispering about me. If you are with me, they will whisper about you too." "Let them whisper," he said. "I have never cared much for gossip. I care about what is real, and you are the realest thing I have ever known." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I have feelings for you too," she admitted. "I tried not to. I thought it would be safer to keep my heart closed, but you made that impossible." He smiled and pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. Their courtship, if it could be called that, was unconventional. They could not exactly go into town together without stirring up more gossip, so they spent their time together at the ranch. Sam taught her to ride better, taking her out on his gentlest mare to explore the property. She showed him new recipes, and they cooked together in the evenings, laughing when things went wrong and celebrating when they turned out right. The other men noticed the change between them and approved. Tom, in particular, seemed pleased. "About time Sam found a good woman," he told Lillian one day. "He has been alone too long." "What about you?" Lillian asked. "You never married." "I did once," Tom said, his eyes distant. "She died in childbirth along with our baby. That was 30 years ago. I never found anyone who could match her, so I stopped looking. I am sorry." "Do not be. I had 5 good years with her, and I have the memories. That is more than some people get." He looked at her meaningfully. "Do not let fear keep you from happiness, Miss Lillian. Life is too short and too uncertain." As autumn painted the aspens gold and the air turned crisp, Sam and Lillian grew even closer. They talked about everything, about their dreams and fears, about what they wanted from life. Sam wanted to expand the ranch, maybe buy the adjoining property. Lillian admitted that she still wanted to teach, that she dreamed of opening a school someday. "Then you should," Sam said. "We could build a schoolhouse right here on the property. The children of the ranch hands could come, and maybe some from town too, if their parents are not too stubborn to see sense." "You would do that for me." "I would do anything for you," he said simply. In October, on a bright afternoon with the mountains dusted with early snow, Sam asked her to marry him properly. He did not have a ring, but he had something better. He had built her a desk, a beautiful piece of furniture made from polished pine with cubbyholes for papers and books. "For when you start teaching," he said. "I know we talked about building a school, but I wanted you to have something now, something that shows I believe in your dreams." She ran her hands over the smooth wood, overwhelmed. "Sam, it is beautiful. Lillian Graves, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you what love is supposed to be?" She looked at him, at this man who had defended her, believed in her, and loved her despite everything the world said about her. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married in November by a circuit preacher who rode through Ouray. It was a small ceremony with just the ranch hands present. Tom stood as Sam's best man, and Miguel and Billy served as witnesses. Lillian wore a simple blue dress that Sam had bought for her in town, and Sam wore his best shirt and trousers. As they exchanged vows in the main room of the ranch house, with the fire crackling in the hearth and autumn light streaming through the windows, Lillian felt tears stream down her face. They were not tears of sadness, but of joy, of relief, of finally being able to believe that good things could happen to her. "I promise to love you and protect you all the days of my life," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise to honor you and respect you, to be your partner in all things." "I promise to love you with all that I am," Lillian said. I promise to trust you, even when it is hard. I promise to build a future with you, not defined by my past but by our love." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Sam kissed her gently and the men cheered. It was not a grand wedding, but it was perfect. That night, as they lay together for the first time as husband and wife, Sam held her close and whispered, "You are safe now. You will always be safe with me." And for the first time in her life, Lillian believed it. The winter was hard, as Colorado winters always were. The snow piled high, and the work of keeping the cattle fed and the ranch running was constant. But Lillian had never been happier. She woke each morning beside a man who loved her, who kissed her gently and told her she was beautiful even when her hair was tangled from sleep and her face was bare. They settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. Sam had worried that Lillian might be afraid of intimacy after what her first husband had done to her, but she showed him that with patience and love, old wounds could heal. They learned each other's bodies and hearts, building trust with every touch, every whispered word in the darkness. The whispers in town did not stop, but they mattered less. Sam made it clear to everyone that Lillian was his wife and deserved respect. A few brave souls did try to spread their poison, but they found that Sam Lawson had more friends and more respect in the community than they had realized. People who had known Sam for years, who had done business with him and trusted him, began to defend Lillian as well. "If Sam Lawson married her, she must be all right," became a common refrain. It was not perfect. There were still women who crossed the street to avoid Lillian, still men who looked at Sam with pity, as if he had been trapped by a scheming woman. But slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. In March, Lillian discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had been afraid to hope, afraid that even this would be taken from her. When the doctor confirmed it, she rode back to the ranch with her hand pressed to her still flat stomach, marveling at the life growing inside her. Sam's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" she asked, even though she could see that he was. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," he said. "You have given me everything, Lillian. A home, a future, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy was not easy. Lillian was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. Sam was endlessly patient, bringing her crackers and tea, holding her hair back when she was ill, reassuring her that it would pass. And it did, eventually. By summer, she was feeling better, her body rounding with new life. They spent long evenings on the porch, Sam's hand resting on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "He is strong," Sam would say, or she, Lillian, would counter. "It could be a girl. Boy or girl, as long as they are healthy," Sam said. "And as long as you are healthy, that is all I care about." In September, as the aspens turned gold once more, Lillian went into labor. It was long and hard, and there were moments when Sam feared he would lose her. The doctor came from town, and Tom's wife, who had arrived at the ranch that summer to help with the pregnancy, stayed by Lillian's side. After 18 hours of labor, Lillian gave birth to a son. They named him James Samuel Lawson, and he was perfect. Tiny and red-faced and screaming his displeasure at being born, but perfect. Sam held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered to Lillian. "Thank you for this gift." She was exhausted but smiling. "Thank you for giving me a reason to believe in the future." James was a good baby, all things considered. He slept relatively well, and when he was awake, he was curious and alert. Sam was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with James when he fussed. Watching Sam with their son made Lillian fall in love with him all over again. As James grew from infant to toddler, the whispers about Lillian finally began to fade. It was hard to maintain scandal about a woman who was clearly a devoted wife and mother, who worked hard and treated everyone with kindness. Even the most stubborn gossips found their ammunition running dry. One day, nearly 3 years after Lillian had arrived in Ouray, she was in town buying supplies when a woman approached her. It was Mrs. Patterson from the Mercantile, the same woman who had refused to hire her that first day. "Mrs. Lawson," the woman said, her face uncertain, "I want to apologize to you. I judged you unfairly when you first came to town. I listened to gossip instead of giving you a chance to show who you really were. I am sorry." Lillian was taken aback. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I appreciate that. I also wanted to ask if you would consider teaching my daughter to read. She is 7 and the nearest school is too far for her to attend daily. I heard you used to want to be a teacher." Lillian felt her heart lift. "I would be happy to teach her." That was how it started. First Mrs. Patterson's daughter, then 2 more children from town. Within 6 months, Lillian was teaching 6 children in the main room of the ranch house. Sam watched with pride as she guided her students through their lessons, patient and encouraging. "You are a natural teacher," he told her one evening after the children had gone home. "They love you." "I love doing it," she admitted. "I never thought I would get this chance." "I told you," Sam said, pulling her close. "You can have any future you want." The school grew. Sam built a proper schoolhouse on the property, just as he had promised. A 1-room building with big windows to let in light and a stove to keep it warm in winter. More families sent their children, even some who had once whispered about Lillian's past. It seemed that good work and a kind heart could overcome even the darkest rumors. In the spring of 1883, Lillian discovered she was pregnant again. She was nervous, remembering how difficult the first pregnancy had been, but this time was easier. Her body knew what to do, and she felt stronger than before. In December, she gave birth to a daughter. They named her Ruth after Sam's mother, and she had Lillian's dark hair and Sam's blue eyes. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. The ranch prospered under Sam's careful management. The school flourished, with Lillian teaching a dozen children of various ages. James and Ruth grew healthy and happy, surrounded by love and security. There were challenges, of course. A hard winter in 1885 when they lost some cattle. A barn fire in 1886 that destroyed supplies but thankfully injured no one. The normal struggles of raising children and running a business. But they faced everything together, Sam and Lillian, partners in every sense of the word. One evening in the summer of 1888, 10 years after Lillian had first arrived in Ouray, they sat on the porch watching James and Ruth play in the yard. James was 9 now, tall for his age and already showing an interest in the ranch work. Ruth was 5, curious and fearless, forever asking questions. "You ever think about the past?" Sam asked. "About how things might have been different?" Lillian considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not with regret. Everything that happened, as terrible as some of it was, led me here. Led me to you, to this life, to our children. I would not change that." "People still whisper sometimes," Sam said. "I heard someone in town last week telling the story about how you killed 3 men. Lillian laughed, a real laugh free of bitterness. 3 men. Last I heard it was 5. I suppose by next year I will be a notorious outlaw who killed half of Denver." Sam grinned. "At this rate, you will be a legend." "Let them whisper," Lillian said, echoing the words Sam had said to her so long ago. "I know the truth, and so do the people who matter. That you are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known." I was going to say that I am a woman who survived, who learned to trust again, and who found a love worth fighting for." Sam leaned over and kissed her, soft and sweet. "I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret taking a chance on a cowboy with a small ranch and big dreams." "You have already done that," Lillian said. "Every single day, you have done that." They sat together as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. James and Ruth ran over, demanding to know if they could catch fireflies before bedtime. Sam scooped Ruth up while James danced around them excitedly. "Can we, Papa? Please?" "I suppose we could," Sam said, winking at Lillian. "But only if your mother agrees." "Mama, please." Ruth begged. Lillian smiled, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was her life now, not the nightmare of her past, but this beautiful present, this promise of a future. "Yes," she said. "We can catch fireflies." They spent the next hour in the gathering dusk, chasing the glowing insects while Ruth shrieked with delight and James tried to catch them in a jar. Sam stood close to Lillian, his arm around her waist, and she leaned into him, grateful beyond words for this man who had seen past the whispers, past the scandal, past the fear. Later, after the children were tucked into bed, Sam and Lillian lay together in their own room. The window was open, letting in the cool night air and the sound of crickets. "You remember the first time we met?" Sam asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "In the mercantile," Lillian said. "I thought you were just another stranger." "I knew the moment I saw you," Sam said. "I knew there was something special about you, something real and true underneath whatever pain you were carrying." "I thought you were crazy," Lillian admitted. "When you offered me the job, I could not understand why you would take a chance on me." "Because everyone deserves a chance," Sam said. "And because I am a sucker for a woman with haunted eyes and a stubborn chin." She elbowed him gently. "I do not have a stubborn chin. You do. It is one of my favorite things about you." They were quiet for a moment, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other. "Sam," Lillian said softly. "Yes. Thank you for speaking about our future when everyone else only wanted to talk about my past." He turned to face her, his blue eyes serious in the moonlight. "Your past does not define you, Lillian. It is part of your story, but it is not the whole story. The whole story includes how you survived, how you built a new life, how you learned to love again despite everything. That is the story I tell when people ask about you." "What do you say?" "I tell them that Lillian Lawson is the strongest person I know. That she is an excellent teacher, a devoted mother, and the love of my life. I tell them that I am honored to be her husband, and that anyone who judges her without knowing her is missing out on knowing someone truly remarkable." Tears slipped down Lillian's cheeks. "I love you so much it frightens me sometimes. I never thought I could feel this way about anyone." "You do not have to be frightened," Sam said, wiping away her tears with his thumb. "I am not going anywhere. I am going to be right here loving you for the rest of our lives. Promise." "I promise." They made love slowly, tenderly, a reaffirmation of vows spoken years ago and renewed with every touch. Afterward, Lillian fell asleep in Sam's arms, feeling safe and cherished and home. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and challenges. James grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Ruth showed a talent for teaching, often helping Lillian with the younger students. In 1892, Lillian gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas after Tom, who had passed away peacefully in his sleep the previous winter. The town of Ouray continued to grow and change. The silver boom began to fade, but the town adapted, finding new ways to survive and thrive. Sam's ranch remained steady, a testament to his hard work and careful planning. The school became an established part of the community, respected and valued. Lillian's past became just that, the past. There were still old-timers who remembered the whispers, but the younger generation knew her only as Mrs. Lawson, the schoolteacher, Sam's wife, a pillar of the community. The scandal that had once defined her faded into obscurity, replaced by the reality of who she was and what she had built. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1898, Sam surprised Lillian with a trip. They left the children with Miguel, who now managed much of the daily ranch operations, and rode into the mountains. Sam had packed a picnic, and they spent the day at a high mountain lake, the water so clear they could see straight to the bottom. 20 years, Lillian said, marveling. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. Any regrets? Sam asked. Not a single one. She looked at him, at the gray now threading through his dark hair, at the lines around his eyes from years of smiling. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. You gave me safety and love and a future. How could I possibly regret any of it? I am the one who should be grateful, Sam said. You took a chance on a lonely cowboy and made him the happiest man in Colorado. In the whole West, Lillian corrected with a smile. In the whole world, Sam said, pulling her close. You are my everything, Lillian. My partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, the love of my life. I thank God every day that you stepped off that stagecoach in Ouray. So do I, Lillian whispered. So do I. They sat together by the lake as the afternoon waned, talking about their children, about the ranch, about the school, about the future. James was 19 now and courting a girl from town. Ruth was 15 and already talking about becoming a teacher like her mother. Thomas was 6 and into everything, full of energy and curiosity. We made a good life, Sam said. Against all odds, despite all the whispers and judgment, we made a good life. We made a beautiful life, Lillian agreed. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Sam stood and offered Lillian his hand. Dance with me. There is no music. We will make our own. And so they danced beside the mountain lake, swaying together to a melody only they could hear. It was not fancy or elegant, just two people who had found each other against all odds, celebrating the love that had carried them through 2 decades. When they finally rode back to the ranch as darkness fell, they found their children waiting on the porch. James and Ruth had prepared dinner, and Thomas had picked wildflowers for the table. It was a simple meal, but it was perfect, the 5 of them together, laughing and talking and simply being a family. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lillian stood at the window of the bedroom she shared with Sam, looking out at the mountains silhouetted against the starry sky. She thought about the woman she had been when she first arrived in Ouray, broken, afraid, expecting nothing but more pain from life. And she thought about the woman she was now, loved, secure, with a family and a purpose and a future bright with possibility. Sam came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? How far I have come, she said. How different my life is from what I ever imagined it could be. Better or worse, so much better, better than I ever dared to dream. Good, Sam said, kissing her neck, because I have plans for us. Big plans. Oh, what kind of plans? I am thinking we should add on to the school, make it bigger so you can teach more students. And I want to buy that parcel of land to the east, expand the ranch so James will have something substantial to inherit. And I want to take you on a real trip, maybe to San Francisco or even back east. I want to show you the ocean. Lillian turned in his arms, looking up at him with love shining in her eyes. Always planning for the future. That is what you do when you have something worth planning for, Sam said. And you, Lillian Lawson, are worth every plan, every dream, every tomorrow. She kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "Come to bed," Sam said. "We have a lot of tomorrows ahead of us, and I do not want to miss a single one." They climbed into bed together, and as Lillian drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she sent up a silent prayer of thanks. Thanks for survival, for second chances, for a man who had looked past the whispers and seen her true self. Thanks for this life, this love, this future they had built together. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Lillian woke early, as she always did, and went downstairs to start breakfast. As she worked, she heard the sounds of the ranch coming to life, cattle lowing in the distance, horses nickering in the barn, the ranch hands beginning their day. Sam came down and poured himself coffee, dropping a kiss on her cheek as he passed. "Morning, beautiful. Morning yourself." The children tumbled downstairs one by one, Thomas still half asleep and needing to be coaxed to the table. Ruth was already dressed and ready to help at the school. James was planning to spend the day with his father, working with the cattle. It was an ordinary morning, and that was what made it extraordinary. This was her life now, ordinary, normal, filled with small joys and daily routines. No fear, no looking over her shoulder, no whispers that could touch her in this space they had created. After breakfast, Lillian walked to the schoolhouse with Ruth. Students began arriving, their parents dropping them off with friendly waves. Some of these parents had once refused to speak to her. Now they trusted her with their children's education. It was a victory she never took for granted. As she began the day's lessons, teaching the children to read and write and cipher, Lillian felt a deep sense of contentment. This was her purpose, her calling. And it was all possible because one man had refused to listen to whispers, had chosen instead to speak about their future together. At lunchtime, Sam appeared at the schoolhouse with a basket. "I thought my favorite teacher might like some lunch," he said with a grin. The children giggled, and Lillian felt herself blush. Even after all these years, he could still make her feel like a young woman in love. They ate lunch together on the porch of the schoolhouse, talking and laughing while the children played in the yard. "You are good at this," Sam observed, watching her interact with the students. "Teaching. You were meant to do this." "I think I was meant to do a lot of things," Lillian said. "Survive, love, build a life. The teaching is just one part of it, the best part," she considered. "The most fulfilling part professionally, but nothing compares to being your wife, being a mother to our children. That is the best part." Sam squeezed her hand. "I am going to hold you to that later when Thomas is refusing to go to bed and James is complaining about his chores." She laughed. "Even then, especially then, actually, those ordinary moments, the ones that would have driven me crazy in my old life, now I treasure them. They mean I am alive, I am safe, I am home." "You are home," Sam agreed. "And you always will be." As the afternoon wore on and the school day ended, Lillian watched her students leave, waving goodbye to each one. Ruth stayed behind to help clean up, and they worked together in companionable silence. "Mama," Ruth said eventually, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Mary Ellen's mother said something strange the other day. She said that when you first came to Ouray, people talked about you. That there were stories. Was that true?" Lillian felt her heart clench. She had known this day would come when her children would hear the whispers. She just had not expected it quite so soon. "Yes," she said honestly. "It is true. When I came to Ouray, I was running from my past. People told stories about me, many of them untrue or exaggerated." "What kind of stories?" "Stories about my first marriage," Lillian said carefully. "My first husband was not a kind man, Ruth. He hurt me, and when I defended myself, he died. People did not understand what really happened. They made me into something I was not." Ruth's eyes were wide. But you are not a bad person. No, I am not. But sometimes people judge based on incomplete information or rumors. Your father was the first person who gave me a chance to show who I really was. Papa always sees the good in people, Ruth said. He does. It is one of the many reasons I love him. Ruth was quiet for a moment, processing. Does it still bother you, the old stories? Not anymore, Lillian said truthfully. I have built a life here, a real life with people who know and love me. The stories from the past cannot touch that. They are just whispers in the wind, and the wind always moves on. Ruth hugged her mother tightly. I am glad you came to Ouray. I am glad you found Papa. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. That evening, as the family gathered for supper, Lillian looked around the table at the faces she loved most in the world. Sam at the head of the table, solid and steady. James beside him, growing more like his father every day. Ruth, thoughtful and kind, already showing signs of the woman she would become. Thomas, still young enough to believe the world was full of magic and possibility. This was her legacy. Not the whispers or the scandal, but this family, this love, this future. She had survived so much to get here, had fought through pain and fear and loss. And it had all been worth it to arrive at this moment, at this table, with these people. After supper, Sam suggested they all go for an evening ride. They saddled up the horses and rode out across the ranch land as the sun began its descent. Thomas rode with Sam, seated in front of him in the saddle, while James and Ruth rode their own horses. Lillian was on her mare, comfortable and confident after years of practice. They rode to the top of a ridge that overlooked the entire ranch. From here, they could see the house, the barn, the schoolhouse, all of it spread out below them like a kingdom. The mountains rose in every direction, eternal and unchanging, a reminder of how small human concerns really were in the grand scheme of things. Look at what we built, Sam said, his arm sweeping across the view. All of this, Lillian. All of it because you had the courage to start over, to trust again. We built it together, Lillian corrected. I may have had the courage to start over, but you gave me a reason to stay. James and Ruth sat on their horses nearby, watching their parents with the slightly embarrassed but pleased expressions of children whose parents still clearly loved each other. Thomas was more interested in the hawk circling overhead, pointing and asking questions about whether they could catch it. As the sun set, painting the world in shades of gold and amber, Lillian felt a profound sense of peace. This was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in the life that had been forced upon her by circumstance and cruelty, but in this life that she and Sam had chosen together, had built together from nothing but hope and love. They rode back to the ranch as darkness fell, the children chattering about their day and making plans for tomorrow. Back at the house, Lillian supervised baths and bedtimes while Sam checked on the horses one last time before night. When all three children were finally asleep, Lillian and Sam found themselves once again on the porch, their favorite spot, looking out at the star-filled sky. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not needed a cook that day?" Sam asked. "If I had not been at the mercantile at exactly that moment?" "I try not to," Lillian admitted. "It frightens me to think how close I came to missing this, to missing you." "I think we would have found each other somehow," Sam said. "I think some things are just meant to be." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, it is just too much of a coincidence that the exact right person walked into my life at the exact right moment." Lillian leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe you are right. Maybe we were always meant to find each other." "I know we were," Sam said with certainty. "From the moment I saw you, something in me knew, this is her. This is the one I have been waiting for, even though I was broken." "You were not broken. You were wounded. There is a difference. Broken things cannot heal. Wounded things can with time and care and love, and look at you now. You are whole, Lillian, more than whole. You are thriving. She lifted her head to look at him. Because of you. Because of us, he corrected. Because we chose each other every day. Because we built something real and lasting. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, crickets and distant cattle, the whisper of wind through the grass, an owl calling from the barn. I want to tell you something, Lillian said finally. Something I have never said out loud. Anything. When I first came to Ouray, I did not plan to stay. I thought I would work for a few months, save some money, and move on before the whispers could catch up with me. I had been running for so long that I did not know how to stop. But then I met you, and you were so kind, so steady, that I started to think maybe I could stop running. Maybe I could stay. I am glad you did. It was more than that, though. You did not just give me a reason to stay. You gave me a reason to believe that I deserved to stay, that I deserved happiness and love and a future. For so long, I had believed that I was damaged, that I did not deserve good things because of what had happened to me. But you showed me that was not true. You showed me that I was worthy of love. Sam's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You were always worthy of love, Lillian. Always. I am just grateful that I was the one who got to show you that. She kissed him, a kiss full of gratitude and love and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. Come on, Sam said, standing and pulling her to her feet. Let's go to bed. We have a lifetime of mornings to wake up to, and I do not want to waste a single one. They went inside together, locking the door behind them and climbing the stairs to their room. As Lillian got ready for bed, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was no longer the frightened, desperate person who had arrived in Ouray 20 years ago. This woman had confidence in her eyes, laugh lines around her mouth, and a contentment that went bone deep. She climbed into bed beside Sam, and he immediately pulled her close, his body warm and familiar against hers. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I love you too, he whispered back. Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that defied every whisper, every doubt, every moment of despair that had come before. The years continued to unfold with grace and joy. James married his sweetheart at 21, and they started their own family, building a house on the far side of the ranch property. Ruth went to Denver for teacher training and came back to take over the school, allowing Lillian to step back and enjoy more time with Sam and Thomas. Thomas grew into a thoughtful young man with a talent for working with horses. He started a breeding program on the ranch that became known throughout Colorado for producing quality stock. Sam and Lillian grew older together, their hair turning silver, their steps slowing slightly, but their love never diminishing. They became grandparents many times over, the ranch house often filled with the laughter of children and grandchildren. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1918, the entire family gathered for a celebration. James and his wife brought their 4 children. Ruth and her husband brought their 2. Thomas and his new bride were expecting their first. The house was full of noise and life and love. After dinner, after the toasts and the cake and the stories, Sam asked Lillian to take a walk with him. They strolled down to the creek, the same path they had walked on that evening so many years ago when Sam had first told her he loved her. 40 years, Sam said, shaking his head in wonder. 40 years since the best day of my life. Our wedding day. No, he said with a smile. The day you walked into the mercantile in Ouray. That was the best day. The wedding was just the first of many perfect days that came after. Lillian laughed, the sound lighter and freer than she had ever imagined it could be back when she was young and afraid. You always did have a romantic streak. Only for you." They sat on a bench that Sam had built by the creek years ago, watching the water flow past, eternal and unchanging. The mountains rose around them, the same mountains that had witnessed their entire life together. "I have been thinking about our story," Lillian said, "about how it will be remembered, not by us but by our children and grandchildren. And what do you think they will remember? I think they will remember that love is stronger than whispers. That a person's past does not have to define their future. That courage is not about being fearless, but about being afraid and choosing to trust anyway." Sam took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers just as they had that very first time. "I think they will remember that their grandmother was the strongest, bravest, most remarkable woman who ever lived, and that their grandfather was lucky enough to recognize that and wise enough to never let her go. We were both lucky," Lillian said. "Lucky to find each other. Lucky to build this life. Lucky to have 40 years together and many more ahead." "Many more," Sam agreed. "And they did have more years. They watched Thomas become a father, watched their grandchildren grow and start families of their own. They saw the ranch continue to prosper, the school continue to educate new generations of children. They saw the world change around them, automobiles replacing horses, electricity coming to the ranch, the modern age arriving in Ouray. But through all the changes, Sam and Lillian remained constant. Every morning, Sam told Lillian she was beautiful. Every night, they fell asleep in each other's arms. They faced each new day as partners, as they always had, speaking not about what had been but about what would be. When Sam died at age 82, peaceful in his sleep, Lillian grieved deeply but did not despair. She had been blessed with 53 years of marriage to a man who had loved her unconditionally, who had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. She had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who surrounded her with love. She lived another 5 years, spending her days surrounded by family, telling stories of the old days when Ouray was a rough mining town, and a frightened woman had stepped off a stagecoach carrying nothing but a carpet bag and a desperate hope for something better. "Tell us about Grandpa," the great-grandchildren would beg. "Tell us how you met." And Lillian would smile, her old eyes bright with memories, and she would tell them. She would tell them about a kind cowboy who had offered her a job when no one else would, who had defended her from those who would judge her, who had looked past the whispers about her scandalous past and instead spoke only about their future together. "He saved me," she would say. "Not from danger, not from poverty, but from believing that I did not deserve to be saved. He showed me that I was worthy of love, and in doing so, he gave me a future I had never dared to imagine." When Lillian passed away quietly in her sleep at 87, surrounded by her family in the ranch house she had called home for nearly 60 years, they found a letter she had written to be read after her death. Her eldest grandson read it aloud at her funeral, his voice breaking with emotion. "To my beloved family," it began, "I lived 2 lives. In the first, I was a victim, someone to whom terrible things happened, someone whose past defined her present. That life ended when I stepped off a stagecoach in Ouray in 1878. My second life began when I met your grandfather, Sam Lawson. He taught me that the past is simply prologue, that what matters is not where you have been but where you are going. He loved me when I did not love myself. He believed in me when I had no faith left. He gave me not just a home and a family but a future. To my children, grandchildren, and all who come after, do not let whispers define you. Do not let the judgment of others determine your worth. Be brave enough to trust, to love, to build something beautiful from the ashes of what came before. And if you are fortunate enough to find someone who sees your true self and loves you anyway, hold on to them with everything you have. I have lived a long and beautiful life. I have known great love, profound joy, and the deep satisfaction of building something that will last beyond my years. I was once a woman running from her past. I became a woman running toward her future. And in the end, I was simply a woman who loved and was loved in return. That is enough. That is everything, with all my love now and always, Lillian Graves Lawson. There was not a dry eye in the church. They buried her next to Sam, on the hill overlooking the ranch, where they could rest together beneath the mountains they had both loved. The headstone bore a simple inscription: Lillian Graves Lawson, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, teacher. She survived, she thrived, she loved. 1850–1937. And beside it, Sam's headstone, with words Lillian had chosen when he died. Samuel Lawson, beloved husband, father, grandfather. He saw her future when others saw only her past. 1848–1930. The ranch continued under the management of their descendants. The school still stood teaching children. And the story of Sam and Lillian became a family legend passed down through generations. A story of courage and love, of second chances and hard-won happiness, of a woman who refused to be defined by her past, and a man who had the wisdom to speak only of their future together. In the end, the whispers faded entirely, blown away like dust in the Colorado wind. What remained was the truth, pure and simple and strong. That love, real love, the kind that sees and accepts and cherishes, can overcome any obstacle, heal any wound, and build a future bright enough to eclipse even the darkest past. And somewhere in the mountains above Ouray, where the aspens turn gold every fall and the snow caps the peaks every winter, that love endures still, written into the land itself, a testament to two people who found each other against all odds and chose to build something beautiful together, one day at a time, for all the days of their lives.